Vladimir Putin says he agrees in principle to a ceasefire deal with Ukraine, but added he has serious questions for President Trump and that the two leaders may need to hold a phone call soon.
It was a very promising statement because other people are saying different things and you don't know if they have anything to really, if they have any meaning, or I don't know. I think some of them were making statements. He put out a very promising statement, but it wasn't complete. And yeah, I'd love to meet with him or talk to him, but we have to get it over with fast.
Rebekah Koffler is a former Russian-born former U.S. Defense Intelligence officer and the author of Putin's Playbook, and joins us now. Rebekah, good morning to you. So yesterday, the headline was that Vladimir Putin agrees to a ceasefire in principle, which sounds good, but you say this is really a no disguised as a yes, which means things are about to get complicated. So what is Putin demanding here, and where do things go?
Sure. So Putin's demands have always been the following. No NATO membership for Ukraine, no U.S. Boots on the ground on the battlefield, and no security, peacekeeping forces there. And also, in addition to that, Putin wants to transform the entire relationship between Russia and the U.S., and that means to completely reverse everything that took place during former President Biden's term, and that is bring the Russian diplomats back, which literally a lot of them are intelligence officers. Open back the consulates that were shutting down, that were basically bases for spying operations for Russia. Remove the sanctions. He's not saying all of that in that speech, but you have to basically read between the lines. It is my assessment that Putin is not going to accept the peace deal.
Some of what's on the table in the proposed ceasefire: an immediate 30-day ceasefire, the U.S. resuming security and intel to Ukraine, and a prisoner exchange. But there was also a leaked document, Rebekah, showing Russia's plan is to prolong this war for years, past 2026. Russia, of course, denies that. Do you believe that ultimately what's in that plan is their plan?
99.9%. I mean, remember, in Putin's Playbook, my book, I laid out very clearly what Putin's Playbook is, his strategy, which is a multi-pronged strategy that he spent a quarter of a century developing. Okay, and we remember 3 years ago, we were here on the show and you asked me, Todd, how do we stop Putin's Playbook? And what was my answer? I said, it was almost impossible. Why? Because I know that we don't have a counter strategy. Every single war game that we conducted back in the intelligence community ended up in Russia winning the war. And neither us nor the Europeans never bothered to develop a counter strategy, even though 10 years prior to the invasion we knew about it. So I'm confident that that leaked document is correct.
Okay, so Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on CNBC yesterday that Trump is willing to apply maximum pressure on both sides, including sanctions that reach the highest scale on Russia. Would that be considered a counter strategy?
It's just one piece of it. A counter strategy usually involves several prongs. It's military, it's intelligence, it's diplomat, it's what we call DIME. Informational, cyber warfare, space warfare. This is just one prong. And sanctions, we've been sanctioning Russia since 2014. That's a decade, right? What did it do? Some of it actually backfired at the Europeans and at us, and Putin sanction-proofed his economy 7 years prior to the invasion. He took several measures, including de-dollarization of foreign exchange reserves, import substitution program, demanding that the Russian military-industrial complex produces their own stuff indigenously and everything else, so they don't depend on the imports, right? They believe, the Russians that is, that they can weather these sanctions because so far sanctions have not changed Putin's behavior. My assessment is that it's going to be tough for them this time, but they think there's nothing that Bessent can do that Biden hasn't already done.
Yeah, well, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte was with President Trump yesterday. This was, of course, a big topic of conversation. He's going to be on Fox and Friends later this morning as well.
They're finally picking up their end of the bargain, defending themselves as they are neighbors with Russia.
That's what needs to happen.
It needs to happen even more. Rebekah,